Welcome to Edit This, the new podcast, the Ricochet Editors Podcast with John Gabriel, that is myself, and I'm wearing fashionable new spectacles for anybody logged in for the video portion, and Bethany Mandel of Ricochet. How are you, Bethany?
Thank God, I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. How has your weekend been? You said you've been up since 5 a.m. Eastern time.
Yes. Which, like, to be fair, I'm always awake. So I was like, yes, I'll do it. And lo and behold, my alarm went off this morning at 5:01, and I was like, yeah, it's fine. I'm already here, so might as well throw on a dress. I would not put on makeup for Fox and Friends, so I don't know if they're gonna have me back, because like normally Fox is like, but it's on Skype, and so I'm like, I don't even know where my makeup is. I'm not.
They should just have those Instagram filters, just like
yeah,
a makeup filter automatic.
It didn't look great, but I did it. And I said
That's
words
good.
That were coherent. So here we are.
I noticed that I don't get invited back when I'm faced against an opposing person and I agree with them about anything, because usually I'll be like, well, you make an excellent point about X. And then I turn it the way I want it to go. And they're like, you cannot be agreeing. You need to call him a scumbag.
No.
How dare you, sir?
I'm very good at that.
Yeah.
I like arguing. Here's my question. Do you think if I use these bookcases as a backdrop enough times that I can write it off on my taxes?
Absolutely. You better be able to.
Right? Why not?
I tried to do a filter. Let me see here if I can do it. And apparently the wall behind me is painted flesh tone, the exact same tone as myself. So I'll see if I can do it. Because when I was doing that in the past, my head completely disappears. So I need a tan. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Oh, even my hands don't work. Yeah. So I tried, but no dice, folks. Sorry.
Floating. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. The headless horseman. So trying to think of what's been going on here. I have oh, I see your dog in the background. That's always the best part of any podcast. Yeah, this week has been busy, but good. Getting a lot of stuff done. And just a couple hours ago, dropped my daughter off at her job at Portillo's, the finest Italian beef in the country, straight out of Chicago. But she never gives me free food. So there goes her allowance.
Heck yeah. We got back. So the reason that I bailed on our podcast yesterday was because we were driving back from New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And my new computer that has Zoom on it was not set up yet. I didn't have as much time as I wanted to set up the computer. And we were visiting Seth's parents, who are moving out of his childhood home that he's had since he's 2 years old.
Oh, wow.
And it was like emotional for me.
Mm-hmm.
I cried, and I don't have great memories in that house. And I was still like, I have feelings. And it was kind of funny because my in-laws, I didn't remember this. When I packed up all of my mom's stuff when she died when I was 16, I brought them and I put them in my aunt and uncle's basement. And then 10 years ago, they wanted it out of their basement. And by that point, I think Seth and I were serious enough that I put it in my in-laws' basement, even though we weren't married yet. And It's been in their basement ever since. And I completely forgot about it. And it was funny because my in-laws live in like the most Orthodox Jewish town in America. And they are also Orthodox Jewish. And the box is labeled Christmas ornaments. And like, because that's the tub I used to put all my mom's stuff in. So they were always like, yeah, we always knew which one was yours. So we've both been going through like these boxes of like childhood memories. It's like been a weirdly emotional day for both of us because we're like,
yeah,
here's the picture that I drew when I was 7. But it's really cool. I was just putting my sons to bed, and they each have something in their room, my sons, that we had in our rooms our entire lives, which is like
that's cool.
Yeah. And so like the boys have this like kind of weird, very creepy, honestly, nightstand that looks like legs of a baseball player. And that's been in Seth's room his entire life. And that's always, when I think of Seth's room in his childhood home, I thought of this weird, creepy nightstand. And I had a picture that I loved that my mom had framed for me one year. We don't say our children's names in public,
Mm-hmm.
but our younger son's name is very, very unique. And it just so happens to be a movie poster, and the main actor has his name. And so it's like in huge writing.
Uh-huh.
My younger son's like super uncommon name. And
Uh-huh.
I apparently had this in my house growing up my whole life, and I didn't realize it. I'm like, maybe that's why I always loved that name.
Oh,
So
that's funny. Yeah,
yeah,
probably.
yeah, really
Well,
weird.
talking about Orthodox Judaism, I need to tell you a quick story. A few weeks
Yeah.
ago, I got my hair cut, and the lady cutting my hair said, "Oh, what do you have planned for Easter this weekend?" And I said, "Actually, not doing much. I'm Orthodox, and we don't have it for several weeks." "Oh, I
Oh,
see. So for Passover, what do you people do?" I'm like, "Well, we don't call it Passover, it's Easter, but it's not for like another month." And then she's asking me about dietary restrictions and this and that. I went, "Well, I'm Orthodox Christian. Let me do that."
right, right. So
Oh, she
is
was
it Greek? Are
utterly
you
befuddled.
Greek Orthodox? Is it
Basically,
Greek
it's
Orthodox? Okay.
Antiochian Orthodox because I'm a hipster and I couldn't just, Greek's too mainstream, Russia's too old school. So I'm like, Antiochian, that's good, kind of edgy, right in between.
Yeah.
But that's actually the group. They're all like unified. You can jump between churches if you want. They all
Oh,
recognize each
okay.
other. But this one has a lot of converts like me who are idiots and don't know what the heck they're doing when they're supposed to bow and cross themselves and all that. So
I
it's
love it.
idiot friendly.
I love it. I have
So
someone
that's good.
hanging out in my rib cage, so if you're watching on video, you're gonna see me trying to
Oh,
keep
okay.
someone
Okay.
down throughout
Right.
this video.
So,
Um,
what news have you been looking at? The main thing, I just wrote about it for the main site, but Maxine Waters' comments,
right? That
essentially
was
calling for violence in Minneapolis, like, "You're
mhm,
really helping a lot, lady."
yeah.
And the Derek Chauvin closing arguments for today. And I don't know if it's been put to the jury yet. I didn't see any late breaking news, but
I mean,
it should wrap up this week. And
they
everybody's a
are
little
going to
nervous.
riot no matter what.
Hmm.
No
Yeah.
matter what happens, there will be riots. It's
Yeah.
awful. It's really
Yeah.
terrible. So what have I been watching? So the thing that I actually was on Fox and Friends about this morning was the Brearley letter that Barry Weiss just published on her Substack.
Hmm.
I just spirit fingers the whole thing. It was so great.
Hmm.
And I loved that he put his name on it because no parent has done that so far in any
Right.
of these sort of open letters or whatever. Dalton, they had an open letter that ended up taking off the head of their headmaster.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
I grew up a little bit in New York City. I moved a lot when I was a kid, but one of the places that I lived was in New York City. And so I think I have an outsized sort of mindset when it comes to these elite institutions because I have like this New York centric sort of view. But I think they're really important because these are the people who go to Ivies and then control Fortune 500s. So if we don't sort of nip this crazy wokeism stuff in the bud,
Hmm.
it's going to come for all of us. It's going to trickle down.
Yeah, definitely will. And that letter to Brearley, there was an earlier anonymous letter from
Mm-hmm.
Dalton,
Yep.
and it's just happening again and again. And these are
And
the elite
there's
schools. So some people are attacking Barry Weiss. "Oh, this doesn't affect real people. Why are you following this elite stuff?" This is where it trickles down from. It trickles
yes,
down from the
yeah.
elite institutions and just goes everywhere. Like
There's another
yeast, you put a
one.
little bit in the bread and it's gonna go everywhere.
Yep, there's another one. There's an Instagram account that I recommend following called Woke at HW. It's Woke at Harvard Westlake, which is an
Hmm.
LA version of all of these
Yeah,
schools.
yeah.
And they have a great Instagram account as well that I really
Hmm.
recommend. This is a battle for, I think, the future of the elite
Hmm.
mindset, and this is
Hmm.
really important. And it's hard because I read all of these things that Barry publishes, and I'm like, oh, woe is you. Your
Hmm.
$54,000 a year school is too woke. Why don't
Right.
you try going to another school? And I have to like sort of suppress that because these people have fought so hard to get their kids into these schools, and they view their future as hinged on their attendance at these places. I, I mean, this is sort of my esoteric, more religious mind. And I'm like, but is this a life you want for your child? Like, I
Mhm.
wonder if any of them ask that question. Do you want
Yeah.
them to be on this track? Do you want them to be in this? At what cost to their soul? But that's just me, and that's maybe why I
And that's kind of how I've been reacting as well. My daughter's now first year of college for one, the junior year in high school for my youngest. And that's something in Arizona, it's very nice because it's always been very pro homeschool, even when I was a little
Yeah.
kid. My parents certainly didn't homeschool me. They wanted to get me the hell out of the house the second they could. But yeah. But they also have charter schools everywhere. We're one of the first states to start it in the early 90s. And my girls, the good thing about it is you have so much buy-in from the public schools, not the teachers unions and things like that, but the public schools just realize, look, we're going to have to compete with these people. So you had charter schools opening up that focuses on arts. What happened to the public schools? Hey, if you go to this high school, we're focusing on arts. This one is all on STEM, and this one, international finance or international business is one of them.
Right.
And it's great because when our girls were very young and they're going to kindergarten, we were like, okay, did they go to public school? What are they going to do? Checked out the city where I live, the school district. They had very close to our house, maybe a mile further than the school in our neighborhood, they had a Montessori program that was public school. But they're like, we
Wow.
need to compete. And it went through 8th grade. My daughters both did it. It was fantastic. And it's all
Amazing.
public education. Yeah. And then shifted them to charters after that because we couldn't find something equivalent is good. But I had nothing but great success with public and charter schools here in Arizona just because they are kind of sharpening each other and they make each other better. And of course, you have
Competition.
teachers union that try to screw things up and you're destroying public schools. But parents really appreciate this, and
Yeah.
so we've been very fortunate in that. Like you're saying, though, when I've read these letters, I'm like, why would you want your kids to continue in this? I know you tried really hard to do it. And 20 years ago, maybe when you were college age, you're like, look, I had a tough time getting into Yale and I want to make sure my kids have that. Yale isn't what it used to be. The Ivy Leagues aren't what they used to be.
And
And why would you want them on this track where they're essentially brainwashed into doing exactly what I don't know, their bosses say. This
yeah.
crazy dogma they just invented yesterday, and they keep changing every few weeks.
Yeah. I can't imagine that teaching kids that this is fulfilling and that this is worthy of all of their efforts. And I think a lot of this is the lack of religion in our
Mm-hmm.
society and the inability of anyone to sort of think about their souls in a real meaningful way. And so people just sort of do what they think is expected of them and what is societally, I don't know, most appropriate, most accepted, but I can't imagine. I can't imagine raising my children to think that this is a worthy use of their energy and of their time. I would much rather my kids go to Rutgers and
Mm-hmm.
come out. And I don't like Rutgers. I went there, but like I'd much rather them go to Rutgers and come out as good, solid people with the feet, the ground under their feet
Mm-hmm.
than a corporate finance person who went to Yale who has no soul.
Yeah, exactly. I agree completely with that. We have a couple of fine Ricochet members here. I don't know how it's pronounced, Sawatdeeka. And right as we started, Hank Racette joined in. So welcome aboard, folks. That's what we want to do in the future. And we had technical issues on Sunday, and
It was my
we're
fault.
still trying.
John is covering for me. It was my fault. I
Um,
appreciate that.
but we're trying to figure out kind of a more stable schedule. So you'll know ahead of time, oh, this is when they record the podcast, but we really got to sort it out because Bethany has 312 children And you're pregnant with 4 more or 5 more at the moment. So
This is number 5.
okay. Okay. And I just have a bad sleep. And me, I can't tell when I'm going to be sober from day to day, like what time of the day I'm dedicating to drinking or meth. Hunter Biden's got nothing on me.
To that. I really look forward to that. Let me tell you. One day, I'm not housing a human being.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot to do. We stopped at 2. That was enough. They're both very challenging pregnancies and both quite premature, and they're totally healthy and everything. But we're like, okay, 2 is good. And also, I was an old grouch when we started, I think 33 when we had our first.
Okay.
And I was already tired. I was already, 55-year-old man in my head. So
I'm an 80-year-old woman at heart. Remember last week we talked about how I look forward to old age so I can grab butts. Right. I feel like that's 5 years down the line.
Yeah. Same here. Yeah, I always joke with people about anytime I'm driving through, because I live in the town of Mesa, Arizona, which is actually widely spread out. It's like, I think the 3rd largest city in the state, if memory serves. I think it's the 3rd, but it's just a suburb of Phoenix. And if you go way out to the other side of town, it is retirement communities as far as the eye can see. So I just kind of slowly roll through those neighborhoods. Hey, ladies, but they aren't really elite. I have to go to Scottsdale if I want to see the wealthy widows, but I don't know, rent myself out as the younger man, but I'm close enough to retiring as it is.
So Hank, you should unmute yourself and jump in, because your comment just now on the chat was funny.
You think so? You think that will keep me out of trouble or get me into trouble?
I mean, how old are you, Hank? Do you have this blanket?
I'm 60. I turned 60 back in February, so I think that's a pass. I think that. Thank you.
You're not quite there yet.
Oh, so close.
You got another decade or 2.
I could get a fake ID, right?
You got another decade or 2. You can like whiten your hair and like add a little hobble.
I got plenty of gray. I'm okay with that.
You gotta be like 80 to have a free pass.
Seriously, is that it? Okay, well,
I think so. I think you got to be in like HW territory, like especially because HW was in a wheelchair.
It was a wheelchair.
And so it was at eye level. That's not even fair.
I can be pretty.
You can rent wheelchairs.
You can
rent wheelchairs. So
there
you go.
It's just like these overachieving marathon runners who have the 26.2 stickers on your car. It's like they cost $1 on Amazon. Just slap one on there. I won't know the difference. Nobody. It's not like anyone checks.
When somebody dies, just like call them up. This is a famous thing in New York City. When someone in a rent control apartment dies, people start calling and be like, "So, what's up? How you doing? Is your apartment free?" There was a joke, I think it was on Seinfeld, that they should combine the real estate section in New York with the obituaries. And so it's like, Hank died and left 4 children, 3 grandchildren, and a beautiful, spacious 2-bedroom rent-controlled apartment. Inquire within.
That's perfect.
Sounds practical, actually.
Right? I know.
It's probably done, actually.
I mean, in New York City, I wouldn't be surprised. It's a pretty ruthless place. Although now nobody wants to live there, so who knows?
My question coming out of this is down the street from me, they're building what looks like, they don't have a sign out, but it looks like new, business park kind of thing, retail complex with a lot of small offices. And one thing I'm wondering is there going to be a huge dip? I know like San Francisco and New York, I've read some stories about people just not needing all the office space.
I think so.
But it's just like, I can't believe they're building new ones right now because
that's surprising.
Ooh, that's got to be tough.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of friends who their offices have decided to give up the space because they're just like, we've done this for a year and we could save $15,000 a month by not. And so they've downsized. That's one thing that a lot of offices are doing, and they'll have people come in like Monday, Wednesday instead of all week long, or they'll just do like co-working spaces and retreats and stuff.
Right,
they're saving a buttload of money.
I wonder if
you
we're
just
kind
don't
of
need it anymore.
COVID honeymoon as regards the working at home thing. It doesn't work very well for a lot of people. It's not a high productivity mode for a whole lot of workers. And I wonder if business has figured that out yet. That
I think it's also, I mean,
taking a hit.
I selfishly want Seth to be at home forever because it's been so nice to have an extra set of hands to call and be like, can you help me for 5 minutes because everyone is melting down at the same time. But I don't think it's healthy for him, like mentally, to not
Probably
have another
not.
adult to talk to besides myself.
I've been 40 years in my business, and probably 10 of it I've spent in one or another office. I prefer office work, but I do work at home. I've worked at home for decades.
I'm hoping that they'll have sort of a middle point, and they'll say, like, you can come in a couple days a week and stay home a couple days a week. That would be my gravy for my husband.
Sweet spot. Yeah, a lot of people said, because I'm pretty outspoken about what an introvert and non-outspoken person I am, and just wanting to hide in my house and not do anything. So when COVID hit, my friends are like, this has got to be paradise for you. I said, no, you don't understand. I love being locked in my house. I don't like everyone else being locked in the house with me, because it was like my little domain. I'd wake up when I wanted to, put on some coffee, blast some music. When I needed quiet, I had quiet, hang out with the pets a little bit as entertainment when I finished writing a story. And now it's just everybody's here all the time. So my family was not thrilled to hear that perspective on things. I'm like, I'm sorry, it's just tough to write with people everywhere.
Yeah.
But my girls have actually done very well with remote learning. They've adapted to it pretty well, but now they both have the opportunity to go to as many classes as they want. And that's kind of what I want. It's like, for some kids, it worked out fine. For a lot of kids, it doesn't. And a lot of the classmates of my high school are, they just haven't been showing up, or their grades have collapsed and things like that. It's like, you need to be able to work with the child, because different people learn things differently. So
yeah, and especially for young kids, this has been a disaster.
Yeah.
It's a disaster. Yeah. I think when we look back 2 years from now at all the graphs, like on the Star Trek health monitor up above we're going to see declines across the board on productivity, on health, on education, on peace of mind, on all sorts of relationships. I think it's going to have been a disaster.
That's the thing that frustrates me about the conversation about mitigation, is that we're not just talking about virus mitigation. There's a lot of other factors that factor into your health. I always think of it like the video game The Sims, where you take on a persona, and they have these like little bars on the bottom of like how your sim is doing. And your sim needed social interaction, your sim needed lots of other things, and it's not just about food and water. And like we know all of these things. We've always known these things. This is the Russian orphanage research. Babies
absolutely.
die when you don't pick them up.
Well, something I've been meaning to write, and I haven't gotten around to it, maybe this will spark it in me, but if you've seen the Avengers movies, the whole arc where Thanos snapped his fingers, half the creatures in existence disappeared, and then, spoiler alert, they came back 5 years later. And so now they're trying to reintegrate these people, and like Spider-Man, who was a high school student, everybody disappeared for 5 years, and boom, now they're all back. That's how I view the kids. Their world, their social world, their learning, everything stopped cold for a year. And now it's like, okay, you're one grade past where you were, get back in touch with each other. And I think going to cause a lot of issues. And I think one interesting, just anecdotal example is, since we live not too far from Arizona State, I've been joking with people about not needing to wear your mask outside. I've never worn a mask outside, even at the start of this, because it's just illogical. But you go around ASU, every college age kid, mask on 24/7. There's no one near them. They're jogging, mask on. And it's like, what psychologically has been done to people? Because especially when you're younger, you just don't have this lifelong perspective. For me, it's like, oh, I remember a rotavirus ran through our family. I remember this thing that happened. And so you can kind of balance it as like, look, humanity has been through this like 8 trillion times. Yes, we need to be careful with it, but you also need to use common sense and live your life. And if you haven't had that long experience.
I mean, we were just at the playground this afternoon. My kids were the only ones there without a mask on.
Good for
And
you.
yeah, I won't
Man.
do it.
I've been following your account of that. Yeah, and that's good.
I absolutely will not have them and haven't said it publicly. And I mean, whatever, but I actually pulled my kids out of summer camp today and I haven't told my kids yet. So hopefully they can't hear me. Because my county passed more stringent mask requirements than they had. They added on to the mask requirements. Previously, kids had to wear them indoors unless they were engaged in physical activity that would make mask wearing dangerous. And that was sort of amorphously written to, you take it however you want to take it. And then outdoors, it wasn't mandated. Now, the county, and it was 5 and under were exempt from the strict requirement. The county changed it so that now you have to wear a mask indoors no matter what. You have to wear a mask if you're playing sports outdoors. I live in the DC area. We are called the swamp for a reason. And they've changed it that it has to be 2 and over, not 5 and over.
That's insane.
So I was like, I'm not putting my kids in summer camp all summer in a mask in DC. They're going to have to be in it indoors the whole time. And now basically anytime they're outdoors too, I don't think that is healthy or safe, honestly. And one of my kids has sort of like sensory processing hiccups, and he doesn't recognize when he physically needs a mask break. And I can't send him to camp in 95 degrees in a mask if he doesn't recognize that he has to take it off when he can't breathe. It's so angering. It's so frustrating. And it's got to the point where like, I don't basically make my kids wear a mask anywhere. I bring them into stores now without it on.
Good.
And I'm just
Good.
like, I'm done here. And I put mine under my nose. I'm like, I'm vaccinated. My kids don't spread. I'm not playing this game anymore. And like, I'll play it. But like, if you're so afraid of my 7-year-old and my 6-year-old and my 4-year-old, why don't you keep 6 feet? That's on you.
Yeah.
But
It's
nobody's
soul
ever said
crushing.
anything.
It's soul crushing to see a little child in a mask.
Yes,
And
really
we
is.
should have switched. I would have been good with armbands if the people, like you said, the people who were afraid wore the armbands and said, keep away from me, please. Give me room, please.
fine.
I'd have given them room. And I wear a mask when I'm in a store because I want the economy to reopen. I don't
Yeah,
want to be
I know.
making people fearful. So I wear a mask in a store. I'll never wear one outside. It comes off the moment I step outside.
Yep.
And I feel sad when I see somebody walking down the street with a mask on or driving alone with a mask on. It's just
I mean, it's constant.
pathetic,
where do you live, Hank?
fearful. Upstate New York, way upstate New York.
Really?
5 hours
Where?
north of New York City,
Where?
Plattsburgh. It's up
Oh,
on
wow. I
the
grew up
on
in-
Lake
yeah.
Champlain.
Yeah, I grew up in the Rochester area.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I'm way north of that. But yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's surprising that it's that militant there.
oh, and well, no, I don't know if it is compared to any other place, but when I see it, when I see somebody wearing a mask outside, I just feel sorry for them. No,
Yeah.
people here, I've never been scolded about it. I mean, I wear a mask in a store. I can't wear it over my nose.
Right.
Wear it properly, Bethany. But
I don't wear it
I
properly
know,
anymore.
I know.
I stopped when I got vaccinated. I was like, I'm done here.
Yeah, and
I
I see.
can't
I've never
breathe.
been vaccinated. I don't know that I will be. It's my
Right.
cutting off my nose to spite my face action. I think
I mean,
because I
just-
think we overreacted wildly, and it's the worst mistake in public health that's ever been made by humanity.
Well, we copied the mitigation strategies of communist China.
Mm-hmm.
Why did we think that was a good idea?
You created the virus. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, so I think
it.
that I mean, I sort of subscribe to the Josh Rogan theory of, I think that it was not lab made, but it was lab oopsed.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree
And-
completely.
Okay.
They screwed up. And yeah, that's the thing about government. Despite some of the more conspiracy-minded people who think the government is secretly launching all these grand schemes, governments are incompetent. And communism is especially incompetent because you have a bunch of people who spent their entire lives lying to each other to try to CYA, basically.
Yeah.
And that's, they're going to fail like this a lot. We just don't hear much about them because they just silence dissent and silence people talking about them. But there's horrible failures going on there constantly. And one of them one day is going to pop up and it's going to overthrow the regime. And we're all going to be like, wait, what happened? What happened over there? But you can only keep a lid on things so often. So we will see. Here in Arizona, people were very compliant in the city regions, and I'm on the burbs, so I would include us there. Now, lately, the past month, the governor, Doug Ducey, said we never had a mandatory mask requirement, but he basically several weeks ago outlawed city mask requirements. He's just like, this is ridiculous. We don't need to do this anymore. And some of the woke mayors have been fighting back. But now I'll see maybe a third of the people, if I run into a convenience store or something, a third of the people not wearing them, even though they're supposed to, but nobody's really caring anymore. If you go to the rural areas, no one has a mask. No one. So have these little desert communities, stuff kind of up north where, believe it or not, Arizona has pines and cold weather and all that. Whenever I'm traveling outside of the urban areas, I don't see a mask on anyone. So
that's crazy. I can't.
That's
even
been
imagine.
from the start. Yeah.
We've not been like super locked down. We went to Florida. We went to Boca in December, and then we went to Utah. I don't know. 3 weeks ago now. Everywhere I go, everyone's in a mask. And I'm like the crazy person. So it's funny because like I'm pretty outspoken on Twitter. I'm not an anti-masker. Like before I got vaccinated, I wore a mask inside properly, and I still wear it not properly. But I've always been sort of the crazy one that, like, in my Trader Joe's, there was a long time where every single person except for me had a double mask on. And I was the one holdout that was like, I have this thin little like whatever going on. And I was like, this is silly.
Yeah, my main thing has been, my policy is not pro-vax, anti-vax, pro-mask, anti-mask. I am a mind my own business extremist. Because maybe I've just read too much of stoicism or something, but it's like, all you can control is what you do. Don't worry about what anyone else is doing, because if you waste time pointing fingers at others for their failings, you could be improving yourself. And I do not care.
Vaccine.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, I don't care if you get it or not, or wear a mask or don't. I know what I'm going to do. You do what you want. This is a free country.
You can come and cough in my face with COVID now. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I was much more careful. We weren't so careful starting in like May to October, November. Like we were having people over or whatever. We were not particularly careful. But when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, okay, let's like be a little bit more careful. And then when the variants were clearly sort of hitting pregnant women harder and whatever, I was like, okay, we're going to be a lot more careful for a few months. And that's why I got vaccinated, and Seth got vaccinated as well. But now I'm like, I don't care what you do. I don't care if you vaccinate. I have the major vaccine that we've ever created. Like we have it's the best one. Do whatever you want. I don't care. But that's to me, like, I don't understand how any of these restrictions last for more than another 3 weeks, because everyone is on their own now.
So my concern is that the governments have used up their emergency power capital on this. So if we get something like smallpox, are people going to comply with something that's just going to spread so rapidly and kill people? Maybe it's bad enough in itself that people are going to take care of it and lock themselves down, but it just seems unwise to have extended these lockdowns this long for something that is a problem but could be worse.
Yeah, but here's the problem with this sort of, and I think that is a correct question, and I have lost complete faith in pretty much every institution after 2 weeks to stop the spread happened a year and 2 months ago. A year 13 months ago now. We're at 13 months to 2 weeks to stop the spread. Here's my frustration. I'm at the point where I'm like, I will not comply. But what does that actually mean? because we had to. I had no choice about the restaurants shutting down. I had no choice about the stores closing. I had no, like, all of these things were done. And this has been the frustrating part, especially as someone who sort of leans a little bit libertarian, also very conservative, but, you know, sort of get the government out of my business. There was nothing we could do. And there's nothing we can do. And so, like, this mask mandate, you know, outside, even though I live in an area where it's actually mandated, I won't do it, and there's no enforcement. I think that wearing a mask, me personally, inside is stupid at this point because I'm vaccinated. But am I going to be like one of those people who, like, is in a viral video that goes into Target? Yeah. But I'm not going to be that person. And so, yes, I won't comply, but I might have to because I've been forced into it this time. And it's a kind of a scary power play of, like, how much control do they have? And it turns out it's a lot.
And a lot of compliance. That's the sad, a lot of
Mindless
voluntary compliance. Yeah.
Mindless compliance.
There aren't many silver linings to this whole mess, but two of the things that I do like that came out of it. One is how often law enforcement said that's really not constitutional. We don't want to enforce that. I was pleased by that. And I like law. I have a son who's a cop. I like law enforcement, but I appreciated them drawing a line and saying, we're not going to do that. And the other thing is, I think probably in the long run, having less faith in technocratic expertise is a good thing. So smallpox would be horrible, but short of that, having less confidence in the people who want to micromanage us technically is probably in our best interest in the long run. So maybe there's a silver lining in all of this. So anyway.
And I've been very annoyed to how compliant so much of our society is about it. And we haven't experienced this in Arizona, but in Canada, we're seeing, 200 cops called to break up a church meeting and all this craziness. I know that since Orthodox use the weird calendar for Easter, it's later than the traditional Western calendar or whatever. Easter's a bit later, and usually for the Orthodox service, there's a zillion services leading up to it, especially the week of Easter, and then you have the big celebration. And last year, that was just when everything was starting and the lockdowns were just starting. So you just watched over Facebook or Zoom or whatever you could do. But I know several months ago, I won't out this person, but I was talking in a group with some Orthodox priests, and they said, yeah, I know it's a few months off, but we're going to be holding all the services this year in person. And a few people said, but what if the government says this or that, or there's lockdowns? He just said, we will be holding all the services in person this year, because at some point you just have to say, okay, enough. This is important to us. And if you don't want to come, hey, we have video of it, so knock yourself out. But for those who do want to come and are fine with it and willing to take the risk if there is any, you just need to be willing to do that. So that comforted me greatly, that it's like, okay, good. There's several people who are willing to stand up for a little bit of sanity in this.
I wish that my religious community had done the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are some that did in Brooklyn, and in, like, the farther right religiously you got, like Orthodox, whatever. Yep. I went into a store in February in Lakewood, New Jersey, and I looked around and I was like, "This is great, thank you very much," because nobody was wearing a mask, and I was like, "Oh, this is so nice. This is like a breath of normalcy," and it's like that in a lot of these more Orthodox enclaves. And a lot of it is because they got hit so hard, and then they were so good about immunizing that their herd immunity is, like, pretty solid.
Definitely.
But I think it's also, like, a recognition that no one was ever guaranteed tomorrow, and God is the one who's in charge, and we might think we are in charge, but we are not.
Right.
And this is, and that's the thing that really bothers me about all of this sort of people locking down and never leaving their houses again. I'm like, this is the only life that we were given. And if you want to spend it in your house watching CNN, It's not.
Mhm.
You were never guaranteed tomorrow. And like, there's a friend of Ricochet, Christine Ruzel, her father, she decided not to go home and visit her family right when COVID started. And then her father dropped out of a heart attack.
Ugh,
And she
awful.
never saw him. And it's like, we were never guaranteed tomorrow.
Mhm.
But
Yep. And I think there's a really big division with the people who are really into the panic porn side of this. It's the safetyism that has taken over parts of our culture, certainly not all of it, and just not understanding there are much more important things in life than avoiding one certain virus that came out of China last year. And if you don't think that, again, I'm a mind my own business guy. Knock yourself out, lock yourself up, wear 4 masks. I don't care. But for a lot of people, their moral calculus is different. And if I was in a situation where I were in a nursing home and was still ambulatory, I would have broke the hell out of that place, because it's like, look, I don't have much longer as it is. I'm going to enjoy my life for as long as I have it.
You would have had who is the transgender cabinet official who broke her mother out of a nursing home
Yes.
in Pennsylvania?
I cannot remember her name. Rachel Levine, is that it?
Yes, Levine.
Okay.
Yes. But yeah, she saw what was transpiring in the nursing homes and said, I'm just going to pull mom out. And
Mhm.
meanwhile, she's packing the virus in, and she
Right.
pulled her mom out.
Mhm.
That to me, the fact that she sailed through just because she's transgender.
Mhm.
Or he,
That-
as the case may be.
Yeah. Well, it's always a question mark. Do I use the actual pronoun, or
Right.
do I use their preferred
Right.
pronoun? I err when it's an individual person. I err on the side of using the pronoun they prefer, because
You're gracious.
I'm
I go by the one that I assume is correct until I'm corrected. That's only happened once or twice in my whole.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, you break them out of a death trap, which is what
Mhm.
nursing homes became.
It's
Yep.
difficult to argue with people who say that people who won't wear masks are just being selfish, and for them it's all about individual freedom and they don't care about anyone else. They're just kind of being pigheaded and um, just rebelling for the sake of rebelling. uh, there's people who scratch their head and they just don't get that at all. And it's hard because I could see from their point of view how that would seem selfish and self-absorbed and superficial, shallow. I understand that. And as for rebelling and not wearing a mask, I'm not good at that at all. Here in Montana, we have, anytime you're in a store, you'll see people walking around without masks
I've
or
never once
having
seen
them
that
partly
here.
pulled down. And it's been that way almost from the beginning of the mask mandate. And now the mask mandate's lifted, but some stores still require it and some people still don't wear them. And I think the reason I don't rebel is partly, again, I'm a poor rebel, but partly I'm not completely convinced that the mask thing is all bogus. Now, in a store where I'm just going to be walking past people and I'm not having close face-to-face conversations, I don't know how risky that is. So I don't know how effective it would be to wear a mask, say in the grocery store where we're all spread out. But yeah, I'm one of those big compliers.
But I think that also when you don't comply, at least where I live, the onus is on a grocery store worker who makes minimum wage, who worked through a
Mhm.
freaking pandemic. Like, I don't want to put anyone in that position to say, ma'am, can you put your mask on? Like, that shouldn't be on them. And I viewed the grocery store workers as heroes. Whereas the teachers said, I'm just going to play it safe and not teach anyone for 2 years. The grocery store employees, even the people at Trader Joe's, where you're like, me get some spices and some tofu. Like they showed up for work every day. And in the beginning, it was really scary. And there was runs on the supermarkets and there was nothing left on the shelves. And those people showed up every day. And I think it would be really disrespectful to them and everything that they risked, whether it was a real risk or an imaginary risk. We at the time thought it was a real risk. I think it'd be really disrespectful to put them in a position where they have to mask police people.
I completely agree with that. I don't think it's kind to razz the workers. That's not where the solution is going to be, because it's not their fault. It's their job to enforce it. They might lose their job if they don't. And I saw a good friend do that and got me questioning that. So she went up to order coffee and they said they can't fill the order if they're not wearing a mask. And so she said, okay, I won't order coffee. And that was probably better than a big confrontation. But I still felt like that put pressure on the employees. They got to go through that rigmarole of saying that and
Yeah.
having
And they
that
have to be
back
the
and
bad guy.
forth. And they already have enough in their day.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I've been fighting very hard. I've been talking to a lot of people on the Hill here in DC about pressuring the CDC to drop the mask mandate for kids, like basically to match the WHO standard, which is masks on kids 5 and over. I mean, at this point, I think that masks, we should just drop them in general in several weeks when everyone has an opportunity to be vaccinated who is above the age of 16 and who is at risk. When everyone has an opportunity, then I think life should go back to normal, because if you have chosen not to get vaccinated, then you've made that choice. And if you have gotten vaccinated, then you are immune and life should go on. But I've sort of been putting all of my pressure on politicians because they're the ones who actually have the power to do anything about this.
That's one of the odd things about it to me is you say the CDC. I don't know to what degree the various mandates and rules and county regulations follow any kind of coherent specification.
So I know as
I
far
just
as
don't have a sense
the
of it.
masks on 2 years old and older, that comes from the CDC.
But who require? I mean, I don't think it's required in New York State anywhere. That's what I'm saying. I don't know state by state who actually follows any kind of mandates.
So
or how
if there
rigorously.
is a mandate, they usually follow the CDC recommendations.
Do they? Is there a mandate? Yeah. I'm trying to think what we have here.
In New York State, I think so.
We kill our old people. I mean, we do that. We
Yeah.
you know, our nursing homes, but.
And then you put masks for no reason on 2-year-olds.
Do we? Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes from, because I've asked a lot of questions of a lot of people in the state and county levels across the country, and everybody puts it on the CDC. And it's funny because I've actually spoken to people who, and this was the Trump administration, Trump admin CDC era, like the Trump era CDC.
Yeah.
That's who did it. And I've asked people off the record who worked in the CDC and worked in HHS, and no one will admit who actually originated the policy or why it's in place.
Okay.
For two and over, like, why did we deviate from the WHO standard? The WHO standard has always been much more rational. 5 and under are completely exempt. 6 to 12, you have to sort of make judgment calls based on how the virus is proliferating in the local community, the level of sort of in-person contact. So like on a plane, they require a 6-year-old to wear a mask. In school, they actually don't. Across Europe and across Asia. So nobody in the CDC will actually admit to being the person responsible for making that judgment call that under every circumstance, a 2-year-old has to wear a mask, which I find interesting. But there's some movement on the Hill from after all of my nudging, that there's going to be some questions asked of the CDC as to where this came from and why it's still in place and why it deviates so drastically from the WHO.
I want to reframe my comment a tiny bit. The word mandate, I guess, is unclear to me. I mean, Texas and Florida, for instance, are quite lenient in their regulations. So to what degree is the CDC quote mandate actually obligatory on any states and how much
They're
is
not.
followed.
They're
So-
not. So they're
so it's a
recommendations.
recommendation, right?
Yeah, they're
Mhm.
recommendations, but then states adopt them as the mandate.
I wonder how well they do that. I guess that's my impression, having traveled a fair amount, is that states are all over the map. The Dakotas are
So-
one way, New Mexico's another, and weird, wherever
So
you go.
Michigan just adopted it this week.
Hmm.
And I got a lot of really desperate messages from Michigan parents. Florida looks like they're dropping it. I mean, it's a red state, blue state thing.
Yeah.
So, I live even though I have a Republican governor, I live in Maryland. Larry Hogan is my governor. It's a blue state.
Yeah.
So they follow the CDC. Texas probably never did.
Right. Yeah, it looks
And
like
George-
I'm online. It looks like it's all over the map, literally.
I'm in the same state as Bethany, and yeah, Hogan is a Republican only in the fiscal sense, not in any of the other issues. He absolutely refuses to really go head to head with our legislature. And they have walked all over him anyway, so.
Yeah.
That's George Daelemans. Thanks for joining us.
Sorry.
And I think we're going to have to wrap this up. We're, I don't know, at about 55 minutes. Does anyone have any final thoughts, questions, etc.?
Sorry I was late to the party.
That's all right. And yeah, we're our schedule is flexible right now as we're trying to find the sweet spot for what time to get together. So we gave Ricochet members a heads up, basically right before we started the meeting, the Zoom meeting. But please join Ricochet if you're just listening to this, so you can contribute on the call, ask questions, give your comments. This is a great opportunity for Ricochet members to chat with each other in podcast format. Do you have any final thoughts, Bethany?
I don't. This has been really nice. I feel like we should maybe have a theme moving forward, but it was so nice.
Yeah,
to just
definitely.
shoot the breeze with everybody for an hour.
Right.
And I'm so glad that people logged on. This was really, really
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah,
Well,
so
thanks
thanks
for doing
all
it.
of you for being on. We really appreciate it. And we'll let you know in the next one. It'll be in a week,
Very good.
minus plus a day. We'll see. So we'll talk to you then. And this should be online later tonight. We're recording this Monday evening, and it'll be on later tonight or in the wee hours of the morning since I'm on West Coast time.
Very good. Bethany, I'm working on my fake ID.
Grab some butts.
All right. Bye-bye.
That'll be
All
the
right.
tagline of this
Goodbye,
podcast.
all. Thanks
Thank
so much
you.
for joining us.
Bye, John. Thanks.